So I created the brand 17 years ago.
Yes.
Put all my little savings in it, worked all alone from my flat for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And then in year 3, we were 2. In year 4, we were 3. And clearly, for the first 15 years of our existence, real watch nerds, geeks, aficionados were our family. Without them, we would not exist. That we have never had any money to advertise, to communicate. There were no social media in those days. Nobody gave a damn about independence. We would go through retailers, of course, because initially I didn't know anybody. It was very difficult for sales staff in a watch store to explain the angst, the soul, the story, the journey we've gone through to try and create a watch. None of us little independents, artisanal independents, never did this because we thought there was any money. There was no money. So it was not about that. It was about having a purpose, existing. It's the only thing we know how to do. Watchmaking saved my life. I'm an engineer by training. And I fell into watchmaking 31 years ago, just after my engineering, in a moment where watchmaking was dead. Nobody wanted to buy a mechanical watch. We're talking of the end of the 80s. And my parents looked at me when I told them I was going to work for a brand called Eqotime, which is very famous today, but 31 years ago it was making half the revenue I'm doing with my little MB&F. They looked at me like, are you sure? and so, yeah, it's watchmaking saved my life. So I was very, very lucky. I had 2 mentors, Henri-John Belmont, the then managing director, who hired me, and Günther Blümlein, and I have, as a youngster, I think the first thing you have to think for your first job is not how much money am I going to make, what's my title, what's my career, it's what do I want to learn. And I arrived there, and it was a roller coaster for a youngster like me. So we would work from 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening. And in 8 in the evening, Henri-John Belmont, who we were 4 of us living up in the Valley Jew during the week. It was him, me, Janek Deleskiewicz was the designer, and Yasmina Steele, who's now at Patek, who used to be the communication manager. And so Henri-John Belmont would come and collect us at 8 p.m. and have dinner with us every evening of the week. So I'm 24 years old. My friends are like, oh, dude, dining with your boss must be a horror. No, it was extraordinary. Every evening, all 4 of us were rethinking the company, and Yannick and I, we were drawing the watches, and we could do this and we could do that. I was the product manager. I was in charge of creating products. I've got goosebumps. It was extraordinary. And so I owe so much to Mr. Belmont and Mr. Blümlein. And Blümlein would come like every 2 months. And he's probably the single most brilliant person I've met in the watch industry. When I left Eqotime after 7 years, I got headhunted, and all the headhunters had said, no, I'm not interested, by Harry Winston to try and save their watch company, which was in complete disarray. And I was crazy because actually I had no idea it was in disarray. I said, oh, well, cool, people are giving me a watch company to manage. It was a horrible first year. And my first Basel fair, where I was dying and eating Xantix because I had a massive ulcer of all the stress I had, the only person of Eqotime who came to see me during my Basel fair was Günther Blümlein. He came from hall 10 to 11, and he came to say, good luck. And it meant so much to me. And Günther was a man who never gave much praise. He was pretty tough, but he was respectful, but he was tough. And I remember he told me, if somebody can save this company, you can. It's the only time of my life that Mr. Blümlein gave me praise, and he did it at the right moment, because I was in the dumps thinking I'd done the biggest error of my life and I was never going to pull this off. And that Mr. Blümlein told me that day, it changed my life. And he passed away the year after. It's the last time I spoke to him. It's incredible, huh? So Harry Winston, I inherit a little company with 7 employees who all want to leave, and it's a total disaster. Yeah. And New York basically says, oh, it really is a disaster. Well, it's your disaster. You deal with it. Like, sorry? Because Harry Winston, the brand, had been put on sale like a few weeks after I signed my contract. It was a really weird situation. So 98, 99, worst year of my life. I worked like a madman, and it took us about 1.5 years to stabilize that company. And then 2000 to 2005, it was rock and roll. Then we went from 8 to $80 million, from 8 to 80 employees. We created the Opus, that's what people remember. When I came, there was no booth in Basel, so I had to create a booth, and etc., etc. And when I arrived, we couldn't even pay the salaries. And so it was, then we went 2000, 2005, we created the manufacturer, which is in Plan-les-Ouates, etc., etc. And I should have been the happiest of men. I had everything. I had money, I had my face in newspapers, I had recognition, I had power. And the more the years went on, the more I felt uneasy, but I didn't understand why. I'll go one step further. It's not that I didn't understand why, I felt guilty. So I come from a family with no money. I never even expected one day to head a watch, or head of anything. It wasn't even in my software. And here I am, having the life, and everybody wants my life, and I'm like not happy. And then a lot of things happen, and I'll keep it short because I can talk about this for hours. So the most important, unfortunately, is my dad passing away. That was end of 31st of December 2001. And I cried a few seconds, got along with my life. But then it came to bite me later, because unfortunately, me and my dad, we didn't get along. And so there are a lot of things we never told to each other, a lot of things we didn't understand of each other. And then therapy, and talked about regrets, of course, a lot during that therapy. And then realized that the most important day of a human's life, at least for me, is the last one. Is the one you look back and you jolly better be proud of what you've done, so that you can go. Yeah. And then when I realized that, I was 35 years old, I thought, okay, in my personal life, I'm pretty proud of what I've done, but in my professional life, everybody's proud of me, but I'm not proud of the life I'm living. And why? I was a very lonely kid. Yeah. I'm an only child whose parents were madly in love, one with each other, and so they really didn't pay attention to me. And it's okay, but as a kid it's difficult, and I didn't have any friends because I was weird, and I was like a geek and had no social skills, and I craved friends and I didn't have any, and but I was a super creative kid. That was what saved me, and so I'd become a marketeer, meaning I've been creating watches my whole professional life, but they were always watches not watches I wanted to create or wear. They were watches which I thought would sell. So they were watches that I would create because that will please more people. And I hated myself in that session. That's one of the things which I hate in what I'm doing. And the second thing I hate, and I think you'll all agree to that, is that the personal values you inherit, you were taught, and you build yourself in your personal life, it's very, very difficult to keep them up in your professional life. What I mean is that if somebody backstabs you, manipulates you, screws you over, in your personal life, you just go away. But in work, you have to invite them to lunch. Yes. And you end up working with horrible people who have no values, but because there's money or power, you basically put your values and throw them away. And I said, I don't want that anymore. My mum was a Zoroastrian. You know what a Zoroastrian is? Zoroastrianism is the very, very oldest monotheistic religion in history. meaning with one God. So, you know, before that, there were multiple gods, the Greeks, the Romans, etc. But there is one religion way before the Christians and the Jewish religion, is the Zoroastrians in Persia. And they had one God, and their prophet was Zarathustra. And simply, I'm sorry, we're going completely off base on watches here, but simply, a simple thought of that religion is good thoughts, good words, good deeds. That my mum, who's the epitome of that, brought me up that way. And just for the digression, if you saw the biopic of Freddie Mercury, Queen, did you see the film?
If I have.
So if you've seen that film,
I love that guy.
His mum keeps on telling him, good thoughts, good words, because he was also a Zoroastrian. Now, I'm a complete atheist. And we're completely off base on watches. But anyway, coming back to that, the values that my mum and my dad tried to give me, I want to apply them in my professional life also. And that's why I started thinking, if I want to be proud of myself the last day, I have to have the same thing in my professional life, which means my company, no shareholders, show me the money. No, that's finished. I don't want any of that. And I want to be able to work with the people I appreciate, who've got the same values. And I called the brand MB&F, Maximilian Büsser and Friends. Yes. And everybody told me it's the worst name in the history of watchmaking. And you can't call a very high-end watch brand and Friends. And I was like, well, I really want to call it and people who share the same values. Yeah. But that's a bit long as an acronym. And so that's how it all started. And I started dreaming of my little company. And one day I said, okay. We only hire nice people. Yeah. That's incredibly important. Competence has to be, but nice, competent people are an ultra rarity. And also that's one of the many reasons in 2013 I decided the company wasn't going to grow anymore. The brand wasn't going to grow, the revenue's not going to grow. It was that because I came to a size of about 15 people in my team where it was, you really have a startup attitude and it's very difficult to find people who actually think like you. And it was the year my first daughter was born. So I was a late bloomer. I had my first daughter at 46, my second at 50. And when my first daughter was born, I realized, okay, this is the whole new life I'm going to start carving out. I used to give my whole life to my company. My company was my life, and it was my child. So, and then suddenly I had a real child. Yes. And then you're like, okay, now I have to rethink my whole company. And one of the reasons we decided we're completely flat. So we stayed completely flat since 2013, even though the demand has been some years way higher. So no, we stay where you are. I have only two talents, if that. The first is I've got weird ideas. As a kid, it was really complicated. But as an adult, I found it was extraordinary to be weird. So I've got really bizarre ideas. And the other talent I discovered I had, because initially I didn't have at all, was I managed to bring together great people. Yeah. And so that hence MB&F. So all the ideas are mine, but if I don't have these 50, 70, 80, 100 people around me, they just remain ideas or a sketch on a piece of paper. Okay. So give credit where it's due. Come back to my parents. Treat people the way you want to be treated. We've all been told that. We've all told our kids, if we have them, treat people the way you want to be treated. If I was an artisan working for a brand, I would like that brand to say, he or she did it. Most brands don't. No. So let's not forget one thing. This is not a business for me. This has never been a business for me. We could have never created 20 calibers in 17 years if it was a business. It's my life. Yeah. I'm writing my life. I can't write, so I write in a different way. So basically, these last 17 years of what I've created and the way I've acted and the way the people we've treated them is my biography. So that's why I've done what I've done. For me, watchmaking is art. And everybody says the art of watchmaking, okay? But if it's art, why are 99.9% of watches looking the same? So that's when I started creating these kinetic sculptures which give time. But actually giving time is not the point. Yes, the chronometry is amazing because you have to respect your elders, because we are a handful of super high-end artisan watchmakers. So the precision and all that is incredible, but that's not the point. We're in an age of bullet trains and we're creating steam engine locomotives.
Yeah.
So I didn't want it to be considered a watch. So I was racking my brains as how can we call these things? And one day I'm in a concept store in Geneva, which doesn't exist anymore. And I was racking my brain and finding a name. And so I'd already launched the company. And I saw the perfume that André Putman, the famous interior designer from France, had created a perfume, and it was in a pharmacy bottle, you know, these old glass pharmacy jars. And the name of the perfume was Préparation Parfumée, perfumed preparation. And I remember I saw that, and I got out of the store, and this word, horological machine. It's basically semantic. It's just, this is what it is.
Yeah.
It's a machine which is based on horology.
Yeah.
It's not a watch.
No.
And that's how it started.
Yeah.
So when we started, and well, initially I was all alone, HM1, then HM2, and then HM3, I started going to see retailers, and they were like, this is not a watch. I was like, you're right, that's not a watch. This is something different we're trying to express ourselves with. And but they still wouldn't buy them. And so then I went to see art galleries. I said, look, I'm creating art. And these art galleries were like, no, this is a watch. So clearly we were in the middle of something. And that's how at some point I said, like, we have to create our own gallery, a mechanical art gallery. There is no mechanical art gallery in the world.
No.
And that's how we started, because the two worlds didn't understand us, and we thought we were like a foot in both. And that's how we started. So we're actually reshuffling. We'll have two galleries, one in Geneva and one in Dubai, because I also live in Dubai. We're opening 6 MB&F labs, which are actually a concept which is half MB&F, half art.
Yeah.
While galleries are 90% art,
Yeah.
and 10% MB&F. And why are we doing that? Because our partners are usually coming from the watch world, our retail partners, and dealing with 30 different artists who are artists and therefore do not answer emails, do not do what they're told to do. They're artists. But we know that, we know how to deal with them, but our partners go crazy with them. So we've decided that these labs, we will deal with the artists from Geneva, and then we will be then all our labs will speak to us. We'll be a filter and help them to have the art pieces, but they don't have to speak to the artist directly. It's a new concept where we're rolling out, next week is the first in Singapore, then in Paris early October, on Beverly Hills late October, and there's going to be Silicon Valley and Hong Kong in early next year. So yes, it's a big rollout. Actually our partners offered us. We don't have the means for that. We're a tiny company.
Yeah, because it's
So it's actually
the zeros.
says our retail partners who wanted more watches, and we can't give them more watches, said, so if we create this lab for you and we pay everything, will we get more watches? Okay. So basically, and why are we doing this? We're doing this because as a creator who's been at the head of his own company for 17 years, I feel young, but I'm not getting younger. This company has to survive me. And to survive me, it has to be it's not the quantity of watches which has to change, it's the perception of it. Because up till now, most of our clients were people, oh, I met Max at a lunch or a dinner. He's a cool guy, like his story, I'll buy his watch. So it was completely dependent on me. And since COVID is basically luckily disconnected, and now also all these people want the brand, but they never met me, And so by having these standalone small labs, we're also speaking to a different public, which means that one day if I'm not there anymore, I'm not only relying on geeks and the brand can survive. As we were saying at the beginning, the customers who initially bought the first MB&Fs were probably not only certified insane, but they were trailblazers. They were insanely courageous people. People who followed me at the beginning of my story I will never be able to say thank you enough to them. Today, people who come in 17 years later and say, oh, I want to buy a watch. And wow, why can't I get it this year? I said, because there were hundreds of people who were there before you when we were not hot and cool and you couldn't sell my watches over retail, who actually were there not for the money. And I owe so much to them. Yeah. And one of our whys of the company, we've got two whys in the company of why we exist. My why is I just want to be proud, but you can't motivate my 30, now 40 people in the team, or all the people working around us, oh, give the most of you because Max wants to be proud. That doesn't work. So I haven't actually never even expressed that. But so we realized that actually just last year we sat down and said, what's the why of our company? And it was incredible because in the brainstorming, not one person said it's about creating watches. The word watch didn't even come out. And we realized that what makes us the proudest, all of us, is to inspire people to think differently. If our story, which is a bunch of wacky guys who've done everything wrong, everything the other way of what your marketing books and management books tell you to do, worked, maybe you can too. So if we can inspire people to think differently, and the second why is we create communities. Yeah. Willingly and unwillingly. Willingly is the friends, clearly, from the beginning. That was my world, is like, come on everybody, we're going to do something incredible. And then, of course, the people outside, the people in the team, then you had the clients. Yeah. And then you had the fans. Yes. And so we willingly and unwillingly create communities. Yeah. And that one community, I want to call it the tribe. Okay. They're the tribe. They're the people who allowed my dreams to come true, allowed our dreams to come true. And we try and give back as much as we can, and we create special products for them, and we give them, and we pamper them, and it's funny because creatively, we're absolutely not client-centric, meaning, I'm sorry to say, I don't give a friggin' damn about what anybody thinks about what I create. Otherwise, I wouldn't be creating what I create.
Of course.
I mean, there is no market for what we do. And so that's the only way to be super innovative and be true. But if you actually have been insane enough to give us your money to buy one of our pieces, then you're part of the family. Okay. That's the tribe. So I created my first ever ladies MB&F in 2019. Yes, it was a 4 to 5 year process. It was my way of saying I love you to the women in my life, because they were the only family I had left. It was my mum, my wife, and my daughter. Yeah. Unfortunately, my mum passed away during the process of creating it, and my second daughter was born. So it's 3 women, and it was an ordeal. It was an ordeal because at MB&F I create for myself. And I've now managed my brain to work that way. So remember, I used to create for other people in the previous life. Now it's me. Now I have to create not for me, but for women and women I love. And it has to be a I love you message. I had total creative block. I was sketching all sorts of things. I was going left, I was going right. My team was going bananas. I was making them go here, there, feeling horrible. And then one day, I thought, stop thinking what they would like. Create what you would like, but which embodies what you love in the women of your life. So that flying T is a dome with life underneath, giving life. Thank you so much. It's the whole movement, which is completely vertical and swirls in the middle, is because at that moment, now she doesn't want to anymore, but my elder daughter wanted to be a ballerina. So she was all the time in a little pink tutu, swirling around and twirling around in the sitting room. So that it's actually a ballerina. At the back, if you look at the automatic rotor, it's a sun, this beautiful sun. Is because before these women came into my life, I was the center of my universe. Now they've become the center of my universe. They are the sun and I'm the planet which is going around it. All these different things, the dial, why it's at that angle, because I wanted to be a gift to my wife and only she can read the time. So all these things I put into it, came out with it. Everybody looked like, women want ultra thin watches and quartz. I created this 2 centimeter high dome with a flying tourbillon, and of course, so it got the Grand Prix d'Horlogerie of Geneva, and everybody really loved it.
Yes.
But the sales have been really, really small,
Yeah.
because no woman knows that MB&F exists. The women's media don't never talk about us. I mean, it's understandable. We've never talked to them either. And this is a product. We have to talk about it. It's not, if you see just a photo, it's like, what's that weird thing? But what happened then is that Fabrizio Buonamassa, the head designer of Bulgari, who I love, he and I so every time we meet, before this story, we would be sketching and he would do like, we could do an MB&F Bulgari piece. But of course, the bosses will never be okay on that. So it was just he and I. We were just having fun.
Yeah.
And then one day, at the Grand Prix d'Horlogerie of Geneva, where we're presenting that evening the flying tea, I bump into Fabrizio, who is with a tall, elegant gentleman who introduces himself as Antoine Pin and gives me his card. And I'm like, oh, you're the new head of the watch division. He says, yes. And we're walking, I bumped into him in the garage, in the parking. We're walking to the amphitheater. And I said, look, with Fabrizio, we have a few ideas. Could we do a collab one day? He said, yeah, well, why not? I mean, he's being polite. The show happens, they win their prize, we win our prize. And at the end, he catches me, he says, you in Dubai in 3 weeks, at Dubai Watch Week? I'm like, yeah, sure, I am. So let's go and have lunch. Okay. So we actually have breakfast, Fabrizio, Antoine, and myself, in November 2019. And he says, so what do you have in mind? And Fabrizio and I, we look at each other like, this is the moment we have to seize. and so I said, look, you saw our flying tea, we just came out with it. What I would love is to give you a canvas. You're a great jeweler. I'm just a watchmaker. You do the haute joaillerie part of my canvas. And Fabrizio immediately started sketching. He's extraordinary. And Antoine looked at these 2 kids playing together in front of him and said, okay. And it happened. And then lockdown happened, and we created the product on Zoom. So Fabrizio was sketching, showing on the dial, yeah, okay, let's do that, let's do this. And we launched it 2 years later at Dubai Watch Week. It was also symbolic because it started at Dubai Watch Week 2021. And it was, wow, everybody went nuts. They were all sold immediately. And, but you know, these co-creations or these performance art pieces, which I call them, the products are important, but the journey is way more important.
Yeah.
What people will remember the products, I will remember the stories.
Yeah.
I will remember Fabrizio and I sketching and having fun, being like kids, and that moment where Antoine gives me his card, and those are the moments which build my life. I won't be alive anymore if that happens. I think I don't like that word, but I'm going to use it. Disruptive creativity either disappears, and it's just like a quirky blip on the radar of history, or will be rediscovered one day where people go, Jean Prouvé, Monsieur Le Corbusier, or whatever, which they had their little moment of glory and then they disappear. And then suddenly Scandinavian designers, where everybody's going crazy about them, but only a little group of people were paying attention even 20 years ago. And so we'll see, but I don't do it for that.